What is a solution? Well, I think the problem lies in the solution, and that problem is, particularly in his last two games, he's only had one intercept mark between those two games. He had a donut against North Melbourne and just the one against Gold Coast. Where do you want Darcy Moore? Do you want him playing one-on-one with the best forward or playing as that interceptor, which he isn't really doing very well right now? Maybe Darcy Moore is carrying an injury and that's hindering his... Let's talk about the elephant in the room that has been brewing over the course of this year, and that is in relation to the skipper of the Collingwood Football Club, the All-Australian, the Premiership player, Darcy Moore, and where he's at right now, because I feel like there's so much to talk about that it warrants a video on its own, and that's why we're doing this right now. And we're going to talk about what's wrong on a team level, what he can do on a personal level, what's the solution, and so on and so forth. So looking at Darcy Moore's form woes from a team perspective, you have to acknowledge that without Nathan Murphy, Darcy Moore has been a completely different player. And there's many variables that go into that. I feel like, one, there has been a lot of instability in the backline when it comes to the positions and the players that are fulfilling certain roles. We've seen Billy Frampton play forward. We've seen Charlie Dean in and out of the team. Jeremy Howe has been forced to swing forward to provide us an option going the other way. Those things naturally will sort of, I guess, create this friction, and it will make it very difficult to have some congruency in the backline. Last year, you had Nathan Murphy, you had Darcy Moore, Braden Maynard, and obviously Jeremy Howe came back towards the latter end of the year. So there wasn't too much tinkering with the backline in 2023, which is one of the big reasons why I believe Darcy Moore is truly struggling in his position right now. Another issue is with Billy Frampton and Charlie Dean, maybe Darcy Moore doesn't have the same trust, or probably definitely, let's call it a spade, he definitely doesn't have the same trust in a Billy Frampton or a Charlie Dean relative to what he had in Nathan Murphy over the last few years. So when you factor that in, that's probably why we're seeing Darcy Moore play well off his man at times to try and impact and intercept or spoil a certain contest that Billy Frampton or Charlie Dean are a part of, just because Darcy probably doesn't believe in him. Or you can look at it from a different lens and say, well, Darcy Moore really wants to look after his players. He is the captain. He wants to imprint himself on the game and look after these players who are fighting for the positions and trying to find themselves at an AFL level in Billy Frampton and Charlie Dean. So you can look at it those two ways, but whichever way you want to paint it, at the end of the day, he's not playing in the same fashion that he was when Nathan Murphy was playing by his side. The other issue that Collingwood are facing and is having a significant effect on Darcy Moore in games is our lack of pressure up the ground at times, particularly early in the year. It was horrific, and it just goes to show how bad a premiership defence can be made to look when the ball is moved too easily further up the ground and comes in with speed and heat going back the other way. That's when Darcy Moore looks all at sea. And the other thing is, within that transitional period, it's so hard to lead in that moment, to have everybody set up. The best you can do is set up when the play is stagnant. But as soon as that ball is rolling, it is increasingly difficult to actually guide and direct your Billy Framptons, your Charlie Deans, your Isaac Quaynors. You sort of almost have to go in autopilot mode in a sense and operate on your own terms and do what you think is best for you in that moment. And you're playing with that pawn on the chessboard amongst where your other, players are on that field. And you just hope that the synergy is there between all those players to ensure that everyone's doing the right thing at the right time in that transitional period. Now, after those first few games early in the year, it seemed that we were able to create a forward half game and lock it in better, which would alleviate essentially the pressure off the backline from what we've seen in those earlier games. However, it's creeping back in the last couple games, I've noticed. You look at maybe, let's say North Melbourne, and of course the most recent game in, who did we face? Oh my God, we just played them on fucking Saturday, Gold Coast. So we conceded 69 inside 50s against Gold Coast. I can only imagine we conceded a bunch against North Melbourne given how much they scored. In the last 5 games, Collingwood have conceded 55 inside 50s per game, which is the second worst in the league behind Richmond. The contrast in that, well, Collingwood were top 4 for the least amount of inside 50s conceded back in 2023. So you look at that and you could almost narrow it down. It's a reductionist way to look at it, but if you wanted to sum up or summarize this video in one sentence, I could just say Darcy Moore is struggling more because we are conceding more inside 50s. Yes, it's a reductionist way to look at it, but that's probably the most easiest way to simplify it and point out to a problem on a team level. Now, moving on to Darcy on a personal level. First things first, when it comes to a key tall defender, I think the most important stat on their sheet is the intercept mark. Now, Darcy Moore is currently averaging 2.5 intercept marks per game, which has him outside of the top 24 key-sized defenders in the intercept marking category. Last year, Darcy Moore, top 5. He was averaging 3.6, which I know you might think 2.8 to 3.6 or 2.5 to 3.6 isn't significant, but across the course of 26 games, it certainly is. Particularly in his last 2 games, he's only had 1 intercept mark between those 2 games. He had a donut against North Melbourne and just the 1 against Gold Coast. Now, the last time Darcy got donuts in the intercept marking realm was against Brisbane in the grand final. It's a high octane game, high pressure. You can forgive him for that, just given the nature of the environment in that game. But then before that, he didn't have a donut registered to his name for intercept marks since West Coast 2022. There was a game in between Geelong, but he got injured quite early, so we don't count that. So 2022 was the last time he actually got a donut outside of the grand final. So there's clearly some struggles and some trends that we're not quite accustomed to seeing with Darcy Moore. So that is definitely a raise for concern. And I want to tie that in with the fact that Darcy Moore is currently averaging a career high in spoils for 2024. So you can look at that as, all right, well, sure, he's not marking it, but at least he's spoiling these contests that he's getting over to. I would argue, now what is a spoil? Firstly, that's how arbitrary is that? Like, if it's a spoil, is it a clean purchase? Is it a soft drop? So if he spoils it, is it falling right into the laps of players who are front and center? Because if that's the case, then that stat is redundant. The other thing you need to consider is with Darcy Moore, I know as a goalkeeper, even playing footy, when my confidence is low, I'd rather try and spoil it than mark it. So there is the case that Darcy Moore's averaging more spoils than he ever has done so in his career because he's unwilling to try and take an intercept mark because he's so scared of dropping that mark and subsequently resulting in a turnover and a goal. A few other little stats that are worth interest, he's down on rebound 50s along with disposals, and his kicking efficiency is at a career low, 56%. He's never been the best kick, but he usually averages 65 to 66% kicking efficiency mark throughout his career. And we've seen this year, and we've seen before he's been prone to it, he does make howlers of a decision with the ball. I don't think he's necessarily a bad kick. I actually think he's got quite a unique and effective kicking style, but my issue with Darcy Moore's ball use is his decision making. We've seen that quite a bit this year. The last 2 stats that I just want to put into the ether is he's currently sitting on 4 coaches' votes thus far this year, whereas last year he finished on 45. So he'll finish, at this stage, he'll finish nowhere near where he was last year and is nowhere near All-Australian form either. Lastly, he is averaging less one-on-ones per game, but he's losing more of them. So he's averaging 2 one-on-one contests per game and he's losing at a 25% loss rate, which is his worst in 5 or 6 years. So for me, these are probably the metrics I would refer to when considering how good a key size defender is. Obviously, I'd be watching the games and seeing if they passed the eye test. And unfortunately for me, Darcy Moore's just not doing either right now. Now, it's important to be mindful that maybe Darcy Moore is carrying an injury and that's hindering his, I guess, maybe his speed or his acceleration. I do just want to go on a tangent quickly as I forgot to mention it, but the last few weeks we saw Darcy Moore play on Nick Larkey and then we made the change to get Billy Frampton on Nick Larkey and that happened to work out. And then we said, okay, well, now Darcy just play on the 2nd or 3rd best defender, which he typically does anyways, and leave the best defender or best forward to Billy Frampton so that Darcy can play free. And then we see against Gold Coast, Frampton gets absolutely toyed with by Ben King and Sam Day or anyone within his vicinity really. So I guess that poses the question, where do you want Darcy Moore? Do you want him playing one-on-one with the best forward or playing as that interceptor, which he isn't really doing very well right now? And now that I've got a decent sample size, like I said, I was begging for Darcy Moore to play Nick Larkey. that turned to shit very quickly. I was begging for Darcy Moore to play loose on Ben King and let Billy Frampton do that job on the weekend. That turned to shit. I think the best thing for Darcy Moore moving forward when it comes to that specific conversation is just put him on the best forward and let him have at it. But yes, before I went on a tangent, is he carrying an injury? We know he got scans in the mid-season bye for the Pies, so maybe that's something worth considering. Is he carrying something that is significantly hindering him, and is he just playing through it for the betterment of the team? And I think now is the time to be stressed and really worried about where Darcy Moore is at. I've seen Darcy Moore have slow starts of the year. I remember last year he was slow. Maybe even the year before that, he started quite slow. And we'd always say, well, what's going on with Darcy Moore? What's wrong with him? But he always came good. That hasn't happened yet this year. And we're in round 16 going to round 17. And we're about to play Essendon, who have Peter Wright and Kyle Langford. And Langford kicked 4 against us. Peter Wright had an impact. So that's going to be a massive job for Darcy Moore and co. So we'll see where that one goes, but the job doesn't get any easier. We've got a few tough games coming up, and then the last 4 or 5 games we've got the most difficult fixture in the AFL. What is a solution? Well, I think the problem lies in the solution, and that problem is the solution initially is we'd like to maybe see him move into the forward line, but the problem in that solution is we have absolutely nobody to cover him in the back line, to try and play him into form, kick a couple goals, get up and about, and then go from there. Maybe keep him there if he plays so well, or you can just do it just to get his confidence up. Just kick a couple goals and go, all right, Darce, you're up and about now. Get back into the back line and just play on instinct and do what you do best. But of course, that will upset the equanimity of the back line, or whatever's left of it anyways for now. So unfortunately, the solution for now is he has to play through the form woes, and we just have to be patient. I don't know what else to say. I know how difficult it is to play through games when you're so down in confidence. You're just wondering when you're going to turn the corner. You're not looking forward to going into that game, and then everything that happens in that game, you just feel like doesn't go your way. So I can sympathise for Darcy, but at the end of the day, he's a skipper, and yeah, that's the only solution right now. As far as the long-term solutions, you've got Josh Eyre, who is playing his trade in the VFL. He was selected in the pre-season supplementary period. However, he played forward yesterday or on Saturday against Essendon in the VFL, so I'm not sure what we're trying with that. The other issue is we've got Jeremy Howe, who has been a really good dance partner with Darcy Moore over the course of the years. We know Jeremy Howe doesn't have much time left on his watch, so the long-term solution outside of a Josh Eyre, and guys, let me know if I'm forgetting anybody else, I do apologise, is Charlie Dean, maybe, but Billy Frampton, probably not. But with Howe in the twilight of his career, we need to go to free agency. We need to look at Tom Barrass from West Coast, who hasn't signed on yet. We need to look at Harrison Petty, who's having an awful, torrid time this year at the D's in the forward line. Maybe we can get him for a pretty good deal and build him up in the back line where he initially applied his trade for the Demons. And then you've got Josh Battle at St Kilda, who's having a great year, and it's another player we could probably get for unders relative to what else might be in the market. So those are some solutions. Ideally, I'd like to see Darcy Moore just play through it and overcome it. And yeah, I guess see what happens. I mean, the next craziest solution is when McStay comes back, put him in the back line, and then put Darcy Moore forward. We've seen Dan McStay, I guess, play that swingman role at Brisbane before, so he's capable of doing it. Maybe not to the level of Darcy Moore, but if there's a solution you guys want that's left field, there's that. So anyways, guys, hopefully Darcy Moore can have a good game and have some decent impact against Essendon, and we keep our top 4 hopes alive. Go Pies.